Martin, I don't know about you, but this is getting pretty cold now.
It is getting cold.
But it's
Where's
still...
the global warming?
Pardon? Yeah, where's global warming? But it is a privilege to be here, I have to say. I mean, I still can't get over it.
Yeah. It's very unlike, I think, anything else you can see.
I just talked to someone earlier and said, I mean, it's almost like a sort of, religious or spiritual experience being here. I mean,
It is, I think it's sort of, this is the northernmost settlement in the world, and I think it just shows sort of, it's really on the edge of where humankind can survive.
Yeah, as I said, it's about the nearest I will ever get to the North Pole in my life. I talked a lot with other people about being here and connecting, because we work in climate change, but many of us, maybe have never had this opportunity to really connect somewhere like this with what is actually happening.
And I think that's the whole point of the event, is bringing also together people who look at climate change from different perspectives. You have climate scientists, but you also have people in finance, people in research in various areas. And so I think that's understanding it from different angles.
So, I mean, you have two very important roles, many roles, but two in this space. The chair of the United Nations, or the UN Principles of Responsible Investment, PRI, but you're also chair of the Norwegian, if I got this right, the Climate Risk Commission.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about those two roles.
So the PRI is an organization to promote responsible investment practices. So we have about 2,000 signatories, and our signatories are typically institutional investors.
So pension funds,
asset managers, and we try to help them implement good responsible investment practices. We collect good case studies and share with them. We have a reporting and assessment framework. They report to us the things they do. We look at policy work, for instance, in the climate space. We have an engagement platform, so we organize engagement, meaning when investors engage with the companies they've invested in, we have a platform to allow investors to engage collectively. So all of this is done to help our signatories promote responsible investment.
Okay.
So that's the PRI role, and then the other role, the Climate Change Commission, is more an ad hoc. So it was set up a year ago.
Who was it set up by?
By the Norwegian Government.
Okay.
And we were asked to deliver a report by December of this year. So we're working hard to deliver a report, and that is, I think, really, I think there are two aspects of this. One is getting a better understanding of climate risk, which is nice, but it's only really valuable if it leads to better decisions. So you could look at this as having two parts. One is a more descriptive part, which is what are the different climate-related risk factors that could affect the Norwegian economy. And the second part is more normative, which has to do with, well, how can we manage this risk in a good and prudent way?
Interesting. And is that something the Norwegian government is listening to? What are they going to do with the outputs?
Well, you have to ask them. But they have said publicly that they will follow up the advice from the Commission. So I guess that depends on what kind of advice they're getting. But they have set up this commission, and presumably they're interested in what the commission has to say.
So, part of my thing for doing this, and is that people like you in this space and others that I've spoken to, Christiana, and so on. I mean, to me, you're a climate rock star because of the way you've committed your career and your focus in the space. When an issue, let's face it, is potentially existential to our civilization. Yet, whilst very well known to me and people in the space, you're not really known outside of our space. Whereas, a Hollywood actor, maybe like Leonardo DiCaprio, although he's maybe a bad example because he's so engaged in this space and in climate change. So for people watching this, I mean, what I want to try and get out of this is why this sort of area? What is there anything in particular that drew you to focus in on climate and sustainability?
So I've been interested in this from various angles, but my background is more finance. It's more sort of investments, or originally macroeconomic policies, and I, gradually came to see that this was actually a very relevant issue for investors. The PRI is driven by investors, and it's driven by their priorities. So we ask our signatories what they want us to work on. And now for the last few years, they had climate change and climate issues has been on the top of that list. So in a way, my commitment to this also reflects my obligation towards the signatories of the PRI. They want me to work on this, but it's also, of course, my personal interest. Also through the work on the task force on climate.
Where did that interest sort of? Is there anything particular interest as a child, or something you studied, or
no, not really. But I guess obviously growing up in northern Norway, I guess not so far from here, and seeing some of the very rapid changes that we see in the far north in terms of climate that has had an effect. But I think also an interest, being responsible for overseeing the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund through the financial crisis.
This is when you were in the government.
Yes. I think also led me to think more about different types of systemic issues and things that have to do with the way markets work, because it's obvious that there are some shortcomings and that markets are not perfect, and there are some broader systemic issues, not just related to climate, but climate is one of them. Right? Yeah. Climate is an example of a wider systemic issue that we haven't addressed well enough. And I have a background in government. I have a background more in business, sitting on the boards of various companies. I've been in consulting, so I think I see this from different angles, if you like. And but I think sitting very much sort of close to the Norwegian fund, to a large institutional investor through the financial crisis, was I think everyone who was affected by that crisis started to think more about systemic issues in financial markets.
And Norway, in the last few decades, has become very synonymous with, in many ways, sustainability, which is ironic considering where a lot of the wealth comes from. But it certainly has a reputation abroad or overseas for making very sustainable investments. It's put a lot of money into natural capital, the Amazon rainforests, avoided deforestation, and it's probably now the leading country in building electric vehicles infrastructure. Where do you think? Where does that come from? What's driving?
This is, I think, just a reflection of broader societal concerns that people have been very concerned about these issues in Norway. Many Norwegians have a very close relationship with nature. It's people love hiking and skiing and all that. I think people are connected to nature in a way that maybe people in other countries you can say. I don't know.
This is an example. I mean, you can immediately see why.
But that has been a priority, I think, and sort of obviously this political drive reflects broader priorities in the public. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen.
subscribe to the channel and follow the series of Climate Rockstar videos. There'll be more. Thank you.